chapter 26, verse 36. Then Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane. And he said, "Sit here while I go over there to pray." He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John. He became anguished and distressed. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went on a little farther and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Then Jesus left them a second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So he went to pray a third time, saying the same things again. Then he came to the disciples and said, "Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here." So pressure is evident in everything we do in life. A lot of us deal with it day in and day out. Some of us deal with it maybe every so often. Maybe it's not so stressful in life. You've kind of got it good. Not that you have it good, that you're just the golden child, but sometimes you have it better than others. But some of you feel so stressed. I can imagine being a first responder. A couple of you guys in this room dealing with the think off your toes type of thing. No matter what your situation is, it goes on the back burner. Their situation that's in front of you is way more important. That's a tough scenario for sure. But pressure is all around us. We do a lot of things when we get pressured. With today, I can see it on social media. We like to vent out our pressure, those heavy moments. It's real easy to get on there and have like a sob story moment. You have no idea the day that I'm having, right? We have these moments of like, oh my gosh, it's the worst. And then you get into this, I got to have at least 100 likes or 10 comments to make myself feel better about it, you know? But pressure's tough. I remember a moment in my life that was pressure. You know, this is a fun pressure, but it's still pressure. I remember the day that I knew I loved Anna. And that was pressure, right? The reciprocating love back when you look at her and you go, "I love you." And you're waiting. You know that moment, you don't want her to say awesome sauce. That's cool. But you want her to say, "I love you" back, right? That's tough. And then that moment where you're like, "Hey, what do you think about like rings?" You're like waiting for her to say, "Yeah, rings sound good. All right, let's go." I didn't feel confident to go and pick out a ring myself, so I took her with me. I said, "What do you think about these rings?" It's kind of expensive. Wow, and it's going to, and you kind of say, "Well, it was fun looking." I had a friend, a roommate. No joke, I had a roommate that took his girlfriend 5 times to go look at rings over a course of 2 years. Right, dead man, right? Dead man, stupid man, really what it was. She ended up dumping him. Dumped him finally after I think 4 years or 5 years of dating. 5 years of dating, finally dumped him. She was smart, right? The next week, no joke, she got married. What? I know, right? Whoa. I was still living with the guy. Brian was his name. He was a hoot. He said to me, "I wasn't expecting that." And I was like, "Well, she was, and clearly you missed it big time." Like 5 years, man. She was at church on Sunday, saw a missionary guy came in, fell in love with him. That week they were married. Crazy. And they're still married to this day with children. So it's meant to be, I suppose. But crazy. But I remember that day I got the ring. I went to my father-in-law and I asked him, he was washing his car. I knew Anna wasn't home, so he was washing the car. So I went over and I said, "Hey, kind of curious if I could take you out to eat." Now, he's no dummy. He's a smart guy. I knew what it was about. So he said, "I don't know. I'm kind of busy." What? He kept telling me, I'm busy. And so, "You're too busy?" Because I wanted to propose this coming Saturday, I'm too busy. What do you mean you're too busy? You know what this is about. I don't ask you out to eat for nothing. Come on. About an hour later, I get a phone call. It's from him. I can hear my mother-in-law in the background going, "You tell him any time is available." So Thursday, sure enough, we were going out. So I picked him up at the house. Or no, my bad, I met him. That's right, I met him because that would have been too obvious. So I met him there at his favorite steak restaurant. So I'm sitting in the booth next to him, or across from him. That would have been weird, next to him. But across from him. And the pressure was on. I felt the heat, like the heat was on. So I asked him, I asked him some questions about just sports and the day in and day out stuff. And then finally I was like, all right, listen, the reason why I brought you here, not that you already don't know, but I want to ask your daughter's hand in marriage, and I'll take care of her. I will provide for her. I will protect her. I gave him the whole spiel. And then I just stopped, right? And then I was like, and my father-in-law, if you know him, he's that guy. He will say nothing. So nothing comes out of his mouth. And I'm like, so then I just start, what? Pressure's on. So I just feel like I got to fill the gap, and I'll be awesome for her. And I start making up all these words, like I'll do this, I'll rub her feet, I was doing everything I possibly could. And finally he puts his hand up, it's like, all right, cool, you got it. Yeah, I trust you're a good man, all this kind of stuff. I know you'll take care of her. And so I get the whole okay. So then that weekend, I go take her out, right? And so I'm going to take her out to this beautiful overlook called Seneca Rocks in West Virginia. So I was so excited. I'm going to take her out there. So I was anticipating, for some reason, no one on top of this giant rock, but it was fall time. Actually, it was like this week that we got engaged. So I didn't anticipate all the fall leaf lookers. So here we are, like 100 people on top of this rock. And I'm like, this is lame. So I had planned to set up the camera on a timer and get, the pressure was on for me. I set it up all bad, like to the point where I had prepared a basket of bridal magazines and a bunch of stuff. I'd put it in the back of the car and covered it full of all this stuff so she wouldn't see it. So I wanted to put it in the front seat. So I get out of the car, and I get her out of the car, and then I'm like, hey, we go. And I grab it, and I throw it in the front seat, shut the door, lock the door, and we're like, come on, let's go. So she wouldn't turn around. Like the pressure was all over me. And then so I get to the top of the mountain. There's 100 people up there. I have a camera. I'm going to set it on a timer and propose right when she says yes. And so I get ready. And so we get up to the top, and there's all these people. I'm like, no. And I thought, okay, maybe there's another spot that I can do it. And I was like, not going to do it because I already put the magazines in the front seat, so I had to do it. There was no getting around this. So I take her around this corner, throw her up to this cliff area, literally like a cliff spot. I go, come here, sit right here. Let me set the camera up, and we'll get this really cool photo. So I set it up, and I run over there. And so I get down on one knee, and she's still smiling. She doesn't even look at me. And I'm like, psst. And then I go, and she's like, and I got this photo. So I'm like, please, God, please tell me I got this photo, because this was not digital age photos. This was film. So I had to have, please, God, please let me have got this photo. So she's all excited. We come off the mountain and all that good stuff. I get the film developed, and the shot looks good. It's still good. But there's like this moment where for some reason, the shutter didn't go correctly. So there's this black line right across our heads. Like there's this black line. And I was like, oh, it's not a great photo. It's an okay photo, but it's not a great photo. But oh, well, she said yes. And here we are today with 4 kids later. Pressure was on, Now, that's a fun, light pressure. And I know many of you in this room have bigger pressures. I think if you went and you had to do term papers, hello, that was a lot of pressure, turning that kind of stuff in. Going for a higher degree of some sort, there's a lot of pressure. We get pressure all the time, and it's tough. But what's great is every story in the Bible gives us examples to live by. And we see this even in this moment with Jesus having the ultimate pressure. And what's wild is that Gethsemane actually in the Hebrew means, and this is what an odd, it was crazy that it means this, but it's awesome. The place where olive oil is pressed. That's what it means in Hebrew. The place where olive oil is pressed. So literally, Jesus is in the place of pressure. That's where he's at, in a place of pressure for us. For us to witness this is awesome. He gets to a place where he's even around some folks, his best friends, the 11 that follow him around that are got his back, and he goes over there. Now, there's one missing, and we know what he's doing is betraying him, so here's even more pressure on him. I got one of these guys that was close to me. He's betraying me right now. This stinks. And then he gets to the 3 that are his bestest friends. He takes them even closer in, and he says, hey, will you guys just please stay awake? I'm not feeling good because I know what's at hand. Can you please stay awake? Sure enough, no. First time he goes over to him and says, hey, hello, wake up. Not going to happen. Goes to the second time, right? He doesn't even say anything. The second time he just looks at him. You guys are worthless. You were supposed to be here for me, and here you fell back asleep. He doesn't say anything to him, but that's kind of funny. Goes back to him the third time and says, go ahead, just sleep. Doesn't matter. It's done deal. Because why? He goes and asks his Father in heaven if this cup could be taken from me. If this could be taken from me. And it was heavy stuff. I mean, the heaviest of heavies, as we know, as Christians in this room, we know what this meant. And it was hard. It wasn't easy in the least little bit. Jesus knew what was about to happen, and he was sitting there, please take this away from me. Now, sure enough, some of you you can get in and you can study yourself if you'd like, but you would learn very quickly that even our definition of what Jesus is saying in the Garden of Gethsemane is our translation is a little off when he says the word Father. When we see the word in English, Father, it's very formal, but actually Jesus didn't speak this way. And if you were to dive into the scriptures, you can find it out yourself, and you can look through all the scholars, and they would tell you this as well, is that Father is actually not what Jesus was saying exactly. Now, we know Father means dad, right? We know this. But if I was to ask one of my sons to come in here, what would he call me? Would he come in and be like, Father? No, he wouldn't actually. What would my son say? He'd be like, Dad. If you go down the line, it turns from dad to daddy. Okay, if you go to Cohen will actually, he'll go back and forth, dad, back and forth, daddy. I'll hear it every so often. Colton is still daddy, but every so, like once in the blue moon, it's dad. And then if you go to Carly, it's straight daddy. So if we look at some of the terms used, we see that you actually see a term called Abba. Now, this was probably more like what Jesus was saying in the garden. Now, Abba doesn't actually have a real Hebrew word. Why? Because when he was saying this, you know he was getting weird looks. Everyone in this room, it would just be the same as far as in today's translation. It'd be like us saying, Dada. Abba is the same as if we were saying, Dada. So can you imagine that moment when he even goes to his disciples and say, when you pray, you should pray like this, Dada. You know, John was like, that's awkward. It's so weird. Come on, Jesus. That's so off. But then there's a moment that we see in Scripture in Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 14. And it says this, about that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, who is greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child to him and put the child among them. Now imagine how awkward that would have been for the kid. But truly, actually not that awkward. Think about this with kids. Kids don't care. That's even more beautiful in this whole story that we're talking about with pressure. There's no pressure. I asked my kid about something that's pressuring them. You know what it is? Whether or not, no joke, they're going to be able to play with their toys. That's a pressure moment for them. I'll ask them, like another pressure moment is that, and it's always cliff moments for my children. The cliff moment of, I've got to pee. All the way up to that moment, pressure free. But it's like when it's the worst pressure, I've got to pee. It's the worst. It's like that is their moment of pressure. Using the bathroom or not. Like for us, it's like some of us, yeah, sure, we have to use the bathroom. But it's like, I got to use the bathroom. I'll go use the bathroom. But for them, that's pressure. It's awesome. It's awesome to look at a child. So here, Jesus called a little child to him and put the child among them. Then he said, I tell you the truth, unless you turn from your sins and become like little children, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven. So anyone who becomes as humble as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. It correlates right back to the pressure. We have so much pressure. Why do we go camping sometimes? Those who love camping. Let me just say that. I know some of you are like, I hate camping. I'll never go. It's actually pressure for me. But for us who love camping, I would say Ethan, I know Rob, some of us like camping. Why? Because we get out into this zone where there's no cell phone service. The world cannot get to us. It's kind of like this lifting of, I know the world is still there, but I'm a good 10, 50, 100 miles from civilization, so there's some freedom to this. There's some relaxation. How is it that we can look at a bonfire for hours and actually have some peace with that? I mean, it doesn't really make much sense. It's like, ooh, fire. It's like we're back to our caveman days. But it's really wild. We can just stand there and stare. This is so sexist, but seriously, like, I love sitting around a fire with a bunch of men rather than women, because men just sit there. Women are like, got to talk about something. It's like, no, we just got to sit here. Poke at it. Yeah, that's right. You got to poke at it every so often, just because you can, all right? But there's something relaxing about the pressure is off, right? There's no more pressure. So here we are. Man, I just love when you can release that pressure. And Jesus is actually showing us how to do it in the story, even though you look at it and you go, there was no pressure released off of him. Oh, there was. Because you know why we can see the pressure released off of him? Because when he was captive, when he became a captive in the Romans, all right, when they captured him and they took him and all those folks, all the Sanhedrin, all these people were like all around him, they wanted to attack him. He was totally cool. He was cool. Even knowing that Peter's about to betray him, he's cool. He's like, I see Peter, he's going to betray me. Yeah, well, it just keeps going, right? He didn't fight. He didn't plead his case. When they started asking him questions of should he be released, is he an innocent man? He didn't sit there and say much. He said what was needed, and that was it. He knew what had to be done, because why? There's something really cool in all of this. But we go back in Matthew chapter 26 and verse 30. You'll see that something real peculiar, and again, this is that campfire story for us. This is the moment. They sung a hymn after they had the Passover feast and they broke communion. They sung a hymn. Now, this is odd. Now, it's not odd because now we know Jewish tradition, but it's odd because many times in our situation here, we do two or three things come Easter time. We do communion, all right? We celebrate communion. And then we kind of skip over everything from that verse on. So from in Matthew chapter 26, you'll see that you just skip right over the communion section, and then you go right over to the Garden of Gethsemane. You'll touch on Peter betraying for sure, but then you go right over into the garden. But something happened. They sung a hymn. Now, this is really cool. Now, it wasn't just any hymn. It was the Hallel. And in the Hallel, they're singing the Psalms. And so you see they sing in Psalm 116, and they sing all the way to 118. But then there's actually a great Hallel that they sing. Now, what's really cool about the great Hallel is that they finish Passover with this. So they'll sing the Hallels, and then they'll sing the great Hallel. Hallel. I'm almost on tongues on the verge, just to let you know that. But so it's really cool because what do we say in Yahweh? We say Yahweh, right? Now, in Hebrew, they take out all the vowels. They just do that for us English, all right? But it's Yahweh, and it's Y-H, and there's a different in V and W here, but we'll go, it's a V, but you can go with W-H. So it's Y-H-W-H, okay, or Y-H-V-H, all right? Now, if you break this down, it's really cool. So the Y is actually the 10th letter in the alphabet. And when you go to the H, it's the 5th letter. When you go to the V, it's the 6th letter. When you go back to H, it's the 5th letter. When you add that up, it gets 26. Now, what's cool is the great Hallel. I don't believe anything's by accident when it comes to the Word of God. When you get to the great Hallel, there's actually 26 verses in in the psalm here in chapter 136. So it's cool because in the King James Version you'll read, "Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. His mercy endureth forever." And there's a repetitiveness to this mercy endureth forever. But I love what the Message says. Now, a lot of folks get all hung up on the Message, and you can get a filled day with getting hung up on it all day, but it's really cool because it brings it down into our kind of common day language and how we speak, all right? But it's awesome because you'll see it says, "Thank God, he deserves your thanks. His love never quits." Thank the God of all gods, his love never quits. And after every single one of these 26 verses, you'll see that it says, his love never quits. Let's say this together right now. 1, 2, 3. His love never quits. And that's awesome. That's something. And think about this. Jesus sung this before he went into the garden. And it even says this. It says it there in Matthew chapter 26, verse 30. They sung a hymn before they went to the Garden of Gethsemane or to the Mount of Olives. How cool is this? This is what he sang. This is what he knew in his heart, that God's love never quits. You know, we as individuals, it's hard for us to approach God. We have a lot of pressure on us, and we relieve this pressure by what the world tells us. Sex, drugs, alcohol. We do it on vices all the time. We're constantly going out and we're trying to get this relief. And guess what? First time you ever hear me say this probably, I don't blame you. I know why you go and you say, man, 2 beers are going to make me feel better. 4 beers are going to make me feel better. If I just have sex with this person, it's going to make me feel better. I get it. I know it. It's fast. But the problem is that stuff kills you. That stuff will kill you over time. I understand the whole reasoning behind it. I've had those same emotions. I've had those same feelings. The pressure's so heavy and it's so hard that the easiest thing to do is actually to fulfill the quick desire. And it's easy. It's easy to jump on it. I remember coming home to my father. I'd be out. I'd be coming home. My dad always had this, even when I graduated college, I had a curfew when I moved back into the house because my dad wanted to make sure that I got home at a certain decent time and that he felt good because I was underneath his roof. But because I was underneath his roof, he was responsible for me. So I remember coming home late at night, and my dad he'd look at me. He's sitting in his lounge chair. I'd open up this sliding glass door thing, and I'd walk in, and he's right there. And he was like, "How you doing?" "Doing good." "It was a good night." It was. As a teenager, I didn't want to talk to my dad, so I just kept walking right back to my room. He asked me questions. "How are things going?" "Things are great." I'll go right back to my room, and I'd shut my door, and I'd continue my evening. My dad was asking me how I was doing. Now, I have a sense of knowing that I can talk to my dad any way I can, right? All of us in this room have that type of ability. If you have a good relationship with your father, you should be able to talk to your dad anytime. Be like, "What's up? How are things going?" There's a lot of times in life that I didn't want to talk to my dad. There was definitely moments in my life where I had been out on a date and those hormonal feelings come up where I wanted to have sex with a girl, right? Let's be blunt, let's be honest. If you're a guy in this room, don't even sit here and squirm and be like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." You are a liar. Revelation 21:8 tells me liars go to hell, all right? So let me warn you. But I should have been able to talk to my dad and be like, "Dad, I was on a date tonight, and it was hard because I wanted to drop my pants." Now, I know some of you are like, "I can't believe he just said this." But let's be honest. I remember being in college, and I was around my whole soccer team, and I remember all of them drank, and they all wanted to use me as like their test dummy. They're like, "You've never tasted alcohol?" And I was like, "No, I've never tasted alcohol." I'm like, "This will be awesome." And I'm like, "What?" They're like, "This will be awesome. We'll start you off with hard stuff and then move you down. You'd be a great guinea pig." And I'm like, "You guys are messed up." But I remember that moment of feeling that pressure, like I want to just drink because why not? Because I felt the pressure of having to fit in with the group because there was multiple times that I was made fun of. And I didn't enjoy that, you know? It was hard. I remember getting back. I was at a soccer tournament, and a girlfriend of mine that was nearby. She came and she met me, and the coach said, "Go out, go have fun tonight. You don't have any whatever." So I got back, and they all asked me, "Did you have sex with her?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And then it was on. It was hard. The pressure was there. And I remember my dad, my earthly father, asking me questions like, "Hey, how is it? How's it hard? What's going on?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, it's all good." And I just kind of put the wall down and shut the door and just be like, "No big deal." And that was tough, right? I'm sure he has some good earthly wisdom, along with spiritual wisdom to put at hand, but I didn't want that. I remember those moments. It was tough. It was hard. It was embarrassing. And those pressure of just keeping all of it together. I've even put accountability partners in place, right? I'm doing everything Jesus is doing. Accountability. He's got his best friends, and they failed him. I had best friends. I know, even as a pastor, I have people be like, "Why didn't you call me?" They'll say this to me when they're in trouble. Like, "Why didn't you check on me?" And I'm like, "I didn't feel the force move." Like, I didn't know that I was supposed to. "Why didn't you call me?" Because I was hurting too one time, but you didn't call me either. I need people too. You're not always going to have accountability that's just going to be so solid for you to keep you out of it. You're not. And you can't just rely on your moral compass to keep you out of trouble as well. That moral compass is going to fail you. Just because you're a good person doesn't mean that you're going to stay good all the time because you have good morals. There's going to be moments it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard. So I asked you the question, what's next, right? It's hard. I know that's the biggest fight within the church right now that people are having a tough time with. They're having a tough time because we've put so many different limits and statutes upon the going to our Father in heaven that we can't be real, and we make it hard, and we have to feel like we're just a soldier in the Lord's army, yes, sir. And it's like we're just pomp and stance, all this nonsense of going to God. And I'm not cutting out the reverence that's needed. We need to have reverence when we go to our Father in heaven, for sure. Reverence is really a respect of just, what? He can do it. That's reverence. We feel like it's like this ritual. I got to light 16 candles before I can go in and talk to God. Nothing like that, actually. We feel like, it's like we're back in Old Testament day. We need to slaughter 13 lambs before we can actually enter into the tent and present ourselves to God, and then we're holy. But that's not the case either. What if we got into a place where we Abba, right? When I first got to dating Anna, I was very respectful. Her father was my pastor, so I was very respectful, right? Very, very. I was like nervous all the time, walking the house like a soldier. When we got engaged, still the same thing. I didn't feel loose enough. My sister-in-law, who married her brother, she said, "You're going to be that one guy that breaks the shell, and you're going to be able to call him like father and dad or mom." And so I still feel like I've got to call him pastor, and it's so weird for me. I remember that conversation I had with her. She goes, it just feels awkward. And I'm like, sure, I don't know. But even when we got married, I still walk into the house like, "Hey." Anna walks in, it's like, oh gosh, she's like kicking off her shoes and flipping them off, right? Like flipping shoes off. She's flipping her shoes off. And like she walks in, she goes to like the refrigerator and she opens up the refrigerator and she's like, "Mom, you don't have anything to drink? That's good. What in the world?" She's like yelling. I'm like walking in, I'll drink whatever. If it's prune juice, I'm like, I'm thirsty with prune juice. It's like, I'm going to tell my mother-in-law that she's got all the wrong drinks, I'll just drink whatever. Yeah, Mrs. Huffman, that sounds great, 5 years into marriage, I'm still thinking it's going to be a little better. There's kids involved now. There's grandchildren, so I can still be kind of like, "What's up?" I walk in the house. Sure, I feel a little like okay, but there's coffee maker that I'm a little nervous that I can't really touch because it's his coffee maker, right? But Anna could walk over there and be like, "What's up? Break it or not, whatever. I don't care because it's hers, right?" Feel really weird, like like giving my wife a kiss goodnight when we stay all night there in their house, you know. It's like we're in that guest bedroom that used to be her bedroom, and you're like, hey, kid, your parents are like in the next room. This is weird. I mean, it is. It's awkward. It's like, hey. There's moments, man. It's tough, right? So this last year, it broke. This last year, I was like, that's it. That's it. This is my house. I walked in. No joke. I walked in my father-in-law's house. I'm like, this is my house. I'll do what I want. I'll act as I want. I'll drink what I want. I'll eat what I want. One time, I remember there was like this last thing. That it was like a piece of food of some sort. It was someone's last in the house. And I was like, it's mine. I'm like digging around the house, doing what I want. Like their bedroom was always kind of off limits to me. Not anymore. I go in there. I don't care if he's half naked or not. I'm going in that room. I'm walking in. I'll do what I want. I mean, seriously. So we're at like this, his birthday party. He turned some significant birthday number. What was it, 60, right? So like, I get the microphone. They ask me to say something about it. And I'm like, hey, no more of this pastor junk. I'm like, I'm not going to call you pastor anymore. Don't be signing my birthday cards with pastor and Bonnie. You're going to sign my birthday cards, dad and mom from now on. So I said, no joke. I'm going to do this whole spiel. Megan, my sister-in-law in the background going, woo! She's like screaming. She's no joke. I'm serious. This is how it happened. She goes, yeah, that's right. From now on, it's all changing. Like everybody even some of the people in the room didn't know how to feel because they still got to call him pastor. But you could see there was a little celebration in the back, like from now on, your dad, your mom. So like still a little odd when I'm like, yo, what's up, mom? You know? Yo, what's up, dad? It's awkward. But I've learned, you know what? He is my dad. He's my dad. He's my dad. So it took me a bit. But actually, it's the same even with my Father in heaven that I've learned to realize his love never quits. And he's my Abba. He's my dad. I know it sounds weird to say that you're going to call God, but he's your Abba. I mean, that's what we're actually even said. And matter of fact, in Galatians, turn your Bible to Galatians chapter 4, verse 6. This is good stuff right here. Galatians chapter 4, verse 6. And because we are his children, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, prompting us to call out, Abba, Father. Now you are no longer a slave, but God's own child. And since you are his child, God has made you his heir. This is fantastic. This is exactly what God sent Jesus to do, was to break the mold, to set us to another level, because that's what Jesus did. He broke religion and he created a relationship. He created a romance for God in heaven for us. We have a romance with our Father in heaven. We shouldn't sit here and be nervous about going to God. We actually should go to him and be like, God, tonight I wanted to drink 2 beers. And I know it wasn't really what you want me to do, because what I was doing with this was I was escaping my troubles of today, but I wanted to get wasted. I wanted to drink until I couldn't feel any longer. I wanted to take that back pain medicine that I got addicted to, but yet I'm not even on back. I don't have any more back pains. I want to take this medication that I don't really need, but I know will make me feel fuzzy in like 20 minutes. I wanted to have sex tonight. Oh man, I want to do it right now. I want to do it right now, God. Like that's how we should be going to our Father in heaven. Hey, Dad, man, I have got some temptations right now. I've got some stuff I want to do. Instead, we actually run for this moment. We like run from it. We try to escape the presence of God in these moments because it's easier just to run. But what does Jesus give us the example? That he sings a song that his love never quits, that God's love never quits. Why was Jesus able to fulfill his calling on his life to continue out this sin because he realized God's love was so great and so deep. So for us in this room, when those temptations, the pressure comes on us and it's heavy and it's easy for us to just escape out, it's his love that we lean in on. It's his love that we run to. It's his love that we say, God, it never quits. There for the longest time, I would tell my wife, there was moments I'd sit on my couch and I'd say, I just want to go to the Grand Canyon. And my wife would be like, why do you want to go to the Grand Canyon? Because that is my place of relief. I was escaping to something natural. Yeah, it wasn't actually bad. It's actually a good place. Not like I was wanting to run down to the bar down the street. It wasn't like I wanted to run and go cheat on my wife or I wanted to do something. But actually, in the natural, what it was I was doing, I still was running from my present location to escape out and to just go find relief. When really I could find relief right there laying on my couch and just say, God, I give it to you. God, I come to you right now. God, I come to you and you know me. So God, let me share with you all the problems I'm going on in my head. God, I want to quit. God, I want to run away. God, I want to run away from my kids because they're just so annoying. God, I want to run. I want to escape. But you know, if I kept saying this over and over again, and I never got the revelation of God is so good and his love never quits and never fails, that eventually there's going to be a breaking point if I continue to go down that road of my kids are annoying. I want to escape. I want to quit. And eventually a temptation moment will come where I could actually escape and I could actually quit and I would fail my children. But that's where I know what the word says, and I know what Jesus did for me. And I could say to him, your love never quits and it never fails. So you know what? I can do this. God, you can do this. You can come and you can fill me up and overflow me. And that's what in Galatians chapter 4, verse 6, it says, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, prompting us to call out, Abba, Father. Now you are no longer a slave, but God's own child. And since you are his child, God has made you his heir. You have a moment. Years ago, I didn't know the weight of it, and I didn't really know what was going on. I was sitting on the front row of my father-in-law's church, and I'm sitting there, and he asked me to come up. And it was really awkward because I didn't know what was going on. I was actually daydreaming. I was out in La La Land a little bit. So it was late at night. I was kind of tired. It was during a revival of sorts at the church, and so he called me up, and I'm standing there, and he's actually preaching this message I'm preaching tonight. And he takes off his coat and he puts it around me. And he's talking about the heir. And he actually was using me. His son was in the room as well, but he didn't go to him. He used me as the example. And he actually went through this whole spiel, but I was sleeping, basically on the front row, zoned out. I was daydreaming about something. Who knows what I was daydreaming about? At the very end of the sermon, a gentleman that I'm very close with, Brother Joplin, comes up to me and says, man, that was powerful. Josh, did you get a hold of that, of what he was saying? Do you realize how cool that was, what your father-in-law was saying to you about how you're like an heir? But, you know, he was talking the spiritual, but do you realize that there was something natural there too about how he's accepting you in the family? This was actually within our first year of marriage. It wasn't second year, third year. It was the first year of marriage. He pulled me up and did this. I didn't get it. You know why? I was sleeping. I was tired. It didn't hit me until years later that I realized that's what my father-in-law was saying, and that's what Brother Joplin was saying to me, and now it all comes together. My father-in-law never made me feel like an alien in this house. I was making myself feel this way. I was putting these pretenses on before I ever got pulled into the driveway. I was putting the standards on. My father-in-law could have cared less from the very beginning, but it was me. It was all me. I never felt like I could have that relationship with my father-in-law. Never felt this way. I always my wife, hey, you go do this. You go talk to your dad and ask if this is okay. when I could have done it this whole time. I was missing out on a great relationship with someone to give me actually good wisdom, solid spiritual, natural, the whole kit right in front of me. But instead, I was putting a block. And that's where I would encourage you tonight. Hopefully you're not sleeping during this message like I was 11 years ago. Wake up. You can go to God right now. His love never quits. I don't care how hard it is. I don't care what you're dealing with. I don't care if you drank 2 beers before you showed up here tonight. I don't care if you're half drunk right now. I don't care if you're high up on pain medication right now. Go to your Father and tell him, I'm high up on medication right now. What am I going to do to get off of this stuff? Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of escaping to something that's not what you've intended because it's going down a road that's going to end up killing me. I'm going to make pressure. I'm allowing the world to put pressure on me, and I'm going to burst. We're pressure cookers right now. Especially if you listen to talk radio. You're really a pressure cooker right now. You think the world's going to end tomorrow with Israel. You don't know what's going on. You think God's coming back every 2 seconds, not because he's coming back to actually heal and receive his bride. You actually are thinking because the world's so bad, the only hope is Jesus. But guess what? Jesus already came 2,000 plus years ago. He is our hope for right now. We get all hung up and like, please, zombie attack, please. But that's what Jesus actually was doing 2,000 years ago, was restoring a relationship that was lost. And he brought it to us today to say, guess what? Abba, Father. Abba's not even a real word. Just like dad isn't a real word for us. Dad, right? But he brings it down to a simplistic form for us to understand even today that the child, the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, is a child. Guys, let's get back to this childlike mentality of what is the pressure? I don't know what pressure is. I don't know what pressure is. I'm living carefree. I'm living a life where God's love never quits. Let's pray.